Welcome to another episode of On the Bench Extra, where we're talking about all the local football news. Joining me on the show today, alongside our regular Tom Reid, is BBC Radio Humberside's Matt Dean. We'll be talking about all the games from last week and previewing the games coming up. You can also get in touch with us on social media. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Yeah, good. The first thing we want to discuss is the local teams. We'll start with Hull. How do you think Hull's season's going so far? We've discussed it in some of the shows in previous weeks.
Started very promisingly, Tom, but just recently, of course, it's gone a little awry, hasn't it? They've lost the last 3 games, and one or two people sort of doubting the team and the manager. Not many people doubting the manager, I'm hastened to add, but just one or two. So I think that they'll pick up. They've got some decent quality players, but I think people need to be a bit patient at the moment. Going to Manchester United on Saturday, which we may talk about shortly, but it's never easy in the Premier League, and I think people need to remember that.
And what do you think to this? Matt said about patience being the key there. Really.
Yeah, it was all rosy at the start of the season for Hull. We were talking about the best ever squad, just missing out on Europa League proper, and only a few weeks ago I was talking about them draws at Anfield and the Emirates, and now, you know, there are questions being asked by some. So it's just football, it's how quick it can turn, but they'll be all right, I think.
Cutthroat industry, Reid.
It is.
Isn't it? Moving on to Scunthorpe.
Yeah.
Bit of a disappointing season so far.
Yeah, it started badly for the Iron because they had injuries, I think, mainly, and Russ Wilcox was under pressure right from the off, and they struggled really early on because of the injuries, I think, and that was a big factor in why they found it difficult to get some kind of rhythm into their season. Obviously, the dispense with the services of Russ Wilcox and have brought in Mark Robbins. He's only lost 1 game so far. Things have started to look up for them. And he's been bringing in quite a few promising younger players. Luke Williams has just had his loan extended until January. He joined the club recently from Middlesbrough, a striker with great promise. So I think they will get out of the relegation mire. But again, it's down to patience. It will take a little time, I think.
Yeah, they're going to have to push. And quickly, just Grimsby, how's it gone for them since the start of the season?
They've been pretty consistent this season. I know they had the slip-up against Kidderminster last weekend, but recovered well against Woking in the week and proved they've got a lot of character about them. And I think they've got enough quality to maintain the promotion push that they're on at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Matt. So looking back at the latest set of results in the local area, first of all, Hull City's winless streak continued. It's now 4 games without a win. They lost 2-1 at home to Tottenham, and Steve Bruce is now surely feeling a little bit of pressure. Scunthorpe United threw away a 2-0 lead as Crawley Town crawled their way back to 2-2. Scunthorpe now 2 points from safety. Grimsby secured a vital win on Tuesday as they beat playoff rivals Woking at Blundell Park. The victory heaps pressure on Barnet. The two sides have yet to meet this season. North Ferriby finally came away from Lowestoft with a 2-1 win. The result leaves the Villagers 5 points from the playoffs. So a great result for Town. Matt, what did you make of the performance? You were at the game.
Yeah, it was better than the weekend against Kidderminster when they went down by 2-0. There was an improvement in the performance. They changed the system last night. They went 4-4-2, and I know lots of people quite like that. People get excited when Paul Hurst changed his system to 4-4-2, and it worked last night, and they played well. They dominated for most of the game. There was a little wobble in the second half when Woking got a goal back. I think maybe 1 or 2 people were thinking, are Town going to throw this one away? But in the end, they came good. Then Eljon Lewis again getting a couple of goals. He's an important player for them this season. He's becoming more consistent as the season goes on. He's actually finding his goal scoring touch. I think many people thought that he could score goals, but he's not managed to do it. And this season he is doing it, so he's making a big difference.
Exactly, it has made a big difference. Reid, in terms of the league, how much of a difference has it made with that, the results?
Huge, to be honest, because if Woking had won on Tuesday, they'd have gone above Grimsby, and then that second place is out of their hands. It's still in their hands at the moment. They've got a game, obviously, this weekend against Telford. You would think they'd win, and then they have a game against Macclesfield, which again is a must-win, I suppose, because if Macclesfield beat Town, they go above them. So they need to keep winning these games, and they are doing it at the moment.
Yeah, and Barnet lost as well, which was even better. So obviously, the gap gets smaller.
They're going to have a bit of a stumble along the way. They've been pretty consistent early stages of this season, in much the same way that Cambridge were. If you remember back last season, they sort of started like a house on fire, and then they had a bit of a wobble, and I think Barnet were due one.
Yeah, it's good news for Town. And Hull as well. You cover mostly Hull games this season. What's it like to cover a Premier League team?
Fantastic.
Radio commentary and that sort of thing.
Yeah, fantastic. Everything about the Premier League is so big these days, isn't it? It goes global on a daily basis. I think if you pick up a newspaper in Australia or in America, with the Premier League in the sports section, it's so big nowadays. So the whole interest in the Premier League is great, and it's great to be part of that, and it's fantastic that we've got a local club, and I think we should be championing that all the time, really.
Definitely.
And we do on the radio.
Yeah, definitely. And the result itself against Tottenham, 2-1 loss, Reid.
Yeah, I think, had Hull kept all men on the field, it might have been a different result. I think they were unlucky. They had some good chances, to go on and beat Tottenham, but then that red card came. Was it? Wasn't it? I don't know. It's a different story, that. But yeah, it was unlucky for Hull. But again, I think they're looking behind him now.
Yeah, moving the conversation on, something that Hull have struggled with a little bit is strikers scoring goals. So how important are informed strikers to a club, Matt? Massively important.
Just looking back at Scunthorpe's recent history, the Iron have had some good strikers over the course of the last 10 years. We look at the likes of Gary Hooper, Martin Patterson, these sort of players, Billy Sharp, they made such a difference at the time and propelled Scunthorpe up to the next level. And I think if you can find an informed striker, then you're onto something, aren't you?
Yeah, obviously good defenders, you don't concede goals, good midfielders, you're solid there. But without the strikers up top, you're not going to score the goals. You can just keep clean sheets, but that doesn't win you games.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we said about Scunthorpe, they've built a reputation for it. The names you said, Paul Hayes as well in addition, and they built a reputation. I think they tried to do it with Billy Keane. It's not quite worked.
No, he's not really been given his opportunity though. He's been very much in the shadow of things just since he came to the club from Burton. And I think sort of when he arrived, Russ Wilcox was talking up a little bit. He said he reminded him of Billy Sharp, but he's not really been given a good run in the team to prove what he can do. But his time will come, I think.
Oh, and in terms of you watching Hull, who's the best Hull striker you've seen?
Oh, goodness me. Big expectation this season with Hernandez coming in as a record signing. I don't think he's quite done it yet. So I think that we wait with interest to see how that one's going to unfold. Jelovic has been brilliant this season. I've been really impressed with the way he's come on. He's had his injury, and that came at a bad time, that injury, because he was finding his form. Just come back from his injury. Hopefully now he's back, he can start to make a difference, or maybe even the difference to the team, because the ball doesn't seem to come back at the team so much when he's in the side. When it goes up front, it tends to stick a little bit with him, and I think that's a big thing.
Definitely, especially if the team gets used to that way of playing. The top scorer for the local sides is actually the sharp Lionel John Lewis, Reid, in terms of Scunthorpe, Grimsby, Hull and North Ferriby. So what does that say about the impact he's had this season?
Well, he got a bit of stick, I think, at the start of the season from many fans. I think even we spoke about his form on this show earlier on in the season, but he's proved many people wrong. He's scoring the goals now, important goals at that. It's not goals when they're 3-4-1 up, that they're winning goals.
Yeah, and he's having his best goal-scoring season as well in his career, so that kind of puts it into some kind of perspective. He can get 20 this season, and I think he will.
I hope he does, definitely. So, Greg the researcher's been at it again. He's given us another challenge to test us. So, this is the first part of this week's Tom vs Tom challenge.
In 30 seconds, can you name Scunthorpe United starting 11 from the 2009 playoff final?
Murphy in goal. In the defence, Murphy, Crosby, Williams, Sparrow, Wolford, Togwell, Hooper, Hayes, Jonathan Fort, Clifford. Before we go to the break, here's this week's halftime teaser. Last season, Sam Winnell scored 23 goals for Scunthorpe United. Who was the last player to match or beat this? See you after the break. In terms of goals, Leicester have been struggling a little bit, and we said before the show, Ajoa hasn't scored, I believe, since that United game. So where are the goals going to come from, Matt?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know whether you saw this week, but Emil Heskey has been linked with a return to Leicester. I don't think they're going to come from him.
That would answer our question. Yeah.
Good question. Very good question. Nigel Pearson will be scratching his head about that one. I don't know the answer.
Welcome back to Extras. The answer to the teaser, of course, if you got it at home, was Gary Hooper. He scored 30 goals for Scunthorpe in the 2008-2009 season. Coming up in the show, we'll be talking more with Matt and Reid, and we'll be previewing some of the upcoming fixtures. But first of all, here's the second instalment of mine and Tom's Weekly Challenge.
In 30 seconds, can you name Scunthorpe United starting 11 from the 2009 playoff final? Off the top of my head, Murphin. The two strikers were Hayes and Hooper, and the midfielder was that chap. I don't know his first name, but it was Togwell. My memory's shocking. Is that 4? Goalkeeper. No, it's gone. 4.
Thank you very much again for that one, Greg. How did you find that one, Reedy?
Tough, very tough. My memory's shocking, as you know, anyway.
We're going to have to give him a slap because we're getting too hard now. Right, now what we're going to do, we're going to do something a little bit different. We are going to ask Matt the same question that we have had. So it's the first time that he's going to have heard the question, so we're going to put him on the spot, and he also commentated on this game, he told me. So let's see how he does.
Drop me in it, why don't you?
So Matt, how many players can you name from the 2009 Scunthorpe playoff winning team?
I've got a terrible memory at the best of times. I'd go for probably about 10. We'll start with Joe Murphy in goal. In defence, I think at centre-half was David Murphin. Cliff Byrne was in the back four that day. Ian Morris, I think, actually played in the final. I'm missing a player, I think, here in the back four. Joseph Mills' name comes into my mind, but I don't think he was necessarily playing that day. We'll go to midfield, shall we, quickly. I think Grant McCann and Sam Togwell played in the middle. Liam Trotter was on loan, I think, from Ipswich Town. And Gary Thompson also played, I think, and up top, Gary Hooper and Paul Hayes. How many have I done?
Good. Out of time. We're out of time. You've not done bad at all. We'll tot it up and see how you've done. So we're moving on now to sack or stick. This is where we check how managers are doing, and we usually, most of the time, get them sacked, don't we, Reedy? So this week we're talking about Nigel Pearson at Leicester. The goals have dried up. The wins haven't been coming either. So, Reedy, Nigel Pearson.
Well, we don't want to jinx Pearson, but he's not won since that result against Man United, that 5-3. As Matt said, they've not been losing games. They are, picking up points here and there, but I don't think they'll go down personally. But, there's going to be questions asked over the team's performances and results.
Can I say some Hull City fans won't mind you jinxing Nigel Pearson?
They probably won't now.
Yeah, there was a couple of things, wasn't there, the way he conducted himself at Hull, which the fans...
I don't think the fans necessarily warm to him, even though I think he was a good manager.
Yeah, and we said about Leicester not being on particularly good form. You said before, Matt, they're not exactly getting hammered by
you look at the results since they beat Manchester United, and they've only lost by, I think, the odd goal here and there, with the odd exception. So they are still in touch. I think they're a point behind City on the table in the bottom three. I still think that if I was the chairman of Leicester City, I'd be sticking with Nigel Pearson at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'd stick as well. Just looking at his win percentage for Leicester, his second spell with Leicester, of course, 48.68% win percentage. That's not bad at all.
That's basically 1 in 2, and that's actually a pretty good record.
Getting rid of the manager isn't always the answer.
It's not, yeah.
Look at Alan Pardew at Newcastle United.
Yeah, totally turned things
Joint
round.
fourth.
Yeah. Totally turned things round. In terms of goals, Leicester have been struggling a little bit, and we said before the show, Ajoa hasn't scored, I believe, since that United game. So where are the goals going to come from that?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know whether you saw this week, but Emil Heskey has been linked with a return to Leicester. I don't think they're going to come from here. But
that would answer our question. Yeah.
Good question. Very good question. Nigel Pearson will be scratching his head about that one. I don't know the answer to that.
January's just round the corner,
It is.
so he'll have
Can't
to
come round soon enough.
dip into the market, I think, for a striker.
I think they need more goals from midfield. The centre midfielders especially, the wingers, they've got Mahrez on one of the wings, he's quite an attacking midfielder. Nokia's not performed really in the Premier League, I thought he would. So those sort of players I think maybe have got to chip in a little bit more.
He blows hot and cold, can knock out. I think when he was a Championship player, I remember the Leicester fans were saying exactly the same about him, so it's no surprise that he's been a bit inconsistent so far.
I think they'll stay up Leicester.
Stick with Pearson though.
We'll stick with him. Right, moving on to the big story this week then. So we've got the Hull Daily Mail. We are talking about Robbie Brady getting to play against Manchester United. He's not done it, believe it or not. He's been injured pretty much every time. So how will that be, Matt? And how do you think the game is going to go?
He'll be desperate to be involved for this game. It's a huge game for City in light of the fact that they lost the last 3 matches. And as a former Manchester United youngster, he'll be desperate to keep his place. I don't know whether Steve Bruce will stick with more or less the same team that he fielded against Southampton. and also just latterly against Spurs, a bit more attack-minded. I don't know whether he'll go that way this weekend, but I don't know. Going to Old Trafford, they've gone to the Emirates. They've done all right at Arsenal. They've done all right at Liverpool. So what have they got to fear going to Manchester United?
Probably the best time to face a United team at the moment. All right, they've had that great win at the Emirates. Again, Danny Welbeck playing against his former club was desperate to impress, so I'm guessing Brady will be the same, desperate to impress.
Yeah, I remember interviewing Niall Canavan, the Scunthorpe defender, a couple of years ago, and he said Robbie Brady was one of the best players he's ever played with. How good is Brady when you've seen him?
When he's on song, is really hard to play against. He did very well at Anfield when he came in to replace Andrew Robertson. I think he was many people's man of the match. So he's very, very capable. And we've seen it as well, playing for the Republic of Ireland just recently. He's been on song for them as well. So he is full of confidence right now. I'll probably stick with him.
Yeah, just quickly, Matt, a day in the life of you on a Saturday when you go and watch Hull, Saturday or a Sunday, what is it like? Do you turn up, get yourself a sausage roll, get in your seat, get warmed up?
Sausage roll in the Premier League, get a bit more than that these days, which is great. I mean, you get a lovely meal beforehand. The best place for grub, by the way, is probably Manchester City, because they have like a cabinet full of whatever you want to drink, and you can have pretty much whatever you want to eat as well. Fantastic.
Now let's have a look at some of the games involving the local sides. First of all, Hull City face a tough trip to Old Trafford. Hull's first Premier League trip to Old Trafford was a narrow 4-3 defeat. Scunthorpe travelled to 13th in the table Barnsley. The previous meeting between the sides ended 0-0 in a League Cup, seeing Scunthorpe lose on penalties. Grimsby will be in good confidence going into their game against bottom of the table AFC Telford, the Mariners winning their last two meetings. And North Ferriby finally face Mickleover Sports in the FA Trophy, the winner progressing to the first round proper. Right, discussion first of all, Manchester United against Hull. Matt.
Ooh. Well, Manchester United have come into a bit of form, haven't they, just recently, which isn't good news really for Hull City, given the fact that the Tigers have lost the last 3 games. Manchester United, I think I'm right in saying, have won the last 2. So it's a tough trip. It's always a tough trip to get to Old Trafford. I don't think Hull City have ever won there. So this weekend, I do think that Steve Bruce has got to take a positive approach, given the fact that they've lost the last few games. Why go and have a negative mindset? I think go and have a go. I think that's what fans like to see, really. So we'll see how he lines up for this one. Mo Diarmi back, hopefully from his knee injury as well. That's a big boost, because the fact that he's scored a few goals so far this season for the club, he's been one of the best players, I think, if not the best player for the club so far this season. So I think that's a huge lift for everybody.
Yeah, and Manchester United and Old Trafford isn't the fortress it once was, Reedy. So do you think Hull will fancy it based on some of the away results they've got this season as well?
I think they will actually right now, because they got that point at Anfield, they got that point at the Emirates. All right, bad result against Burnley and Spurs, but again, it's the best time to play United, I think. So they'll go in good confidence, and Steve Bruce knows all about Old Trafford, so he'll just say, have a go.
700th game as a manager as well for Steve Bruce for this game, which is a milestone, which is a nice milestone, isn't it?
Wow,
let's hope he's celebrating at the end of it.
That is a stat, yeah, let's hope he is. Scunthorpe travelling to Barnsley. Barnsley have underperformed start of the season. They've picked up a little bit now. Sam Winnell plays for Barnsley. Yeah. Is he going to come back to his
It's
former
been a big
employers?
loss, I think, for Scunthorpe this season. I know that in the summer when he left, I think some fans were saying, well, I'm not so sure about him being a big loss, but take 23 goals out of a team that was successful last season, and I think his absence has been felt this season. There's a few connections, not just Sam Winnell, of course. Mark Robbins going back to his old club as well this weekend. The Iron on a bit of an unbeaten run at the moment. I know it was a disappointment last weekend to be pegged back, having been 2-0 ahead against Crawley, but they're doing all right. They're going in the right direction. I fancy them this weekend.
So where can people hear you, Matt, on the radio? Just
BBC Radio Humberside Saturday sport programme on air from 2 o'clock this weekend, live from Old Trafford.
Live from Old Trafford, what better way? Really, just moving on lastly just moving on to Grimsby. It won't be pies or sausage rolls, I'm guessing, at Old Trafford. Moving on to Grimsby, AFC Telford. You said it earlier on in the show, a must win.
Bottom of the league, you'd expect Grimsby to win. I expect Grimsby to win that. Linnell John Lewis, as you say, is in form, so what better game for him next to go and prove everyone that he can score a couple of goals in a game. And yeah, it's a must-win really to cement second place for the moment.
AFC Telford have conceded more goals than any other team in the top 5 divisions, I think.
Wow.
So Linnell John Lewis and co should be having a fruitful afternoon.
But what do stats mean anyway?
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget that you can see On the Bench Extra every week, Saturdays 10 a.m. We'll be here talking more football, and we'll have highlights from games and much, much more. Don't forget that you can see On the Bench. That will also be on Estuary Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. And you can also join Matt. He is on BBC Radio Humberside with Sports Talk this weekend. You can tweet us, or you can email us, or you can get in touch on Facebook. The details are on your screen now. Thank you very much for Mr. Tom Reid and Matt Dean for joining me today. That is all we have time for, so thank you for joining and goodbye.